Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Phill Bratt. Phill is a partner at Keoghs LLP, specializing in defending catastrophic personal injury claims for insurers. He has experience identifying and managing more than 10 experts through the course of multi-year litigation. Phill is an expert in using statutory funding, reverse indemnities, and periodical payment orders. Phill recently launched his very own podcast, The London Insurance Lawyer, to promote the successes and discuss the legal insurance world. He has recently been featured by the Law Society and been ranked a Next Generation Partner in Legal 500 2024 and a Rising Star from 2020 to 2023. Phill is passionate about sharing his knowledge on the personal injury sector and is vocal about working life as a dad, utilizing the likes of LinkedIn and TikTok. So, a very big warm welcome, Phill.
Hi, Rob. Delighted to be here.
Pleasure to have you on the show. And before we dive into all your amazing projects, your experiences to date, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
Oh, I would say that Suits is probably 4 out of 10 for reality. Some of it is very accurate, but obviously most of it isn't.
I think you verified your thought very well. And with that, we're going to move swiftly on to talk quite a lot more detail about what we went through in the introduction. So would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a slightly unusual career path, I guess. I mean, it would be more usual now because there are more routes open, but I originally, my background's science, actually, not the traditional legal entry subjects like history and English. I'm maths, physics, economics, design subjects at A level. Then I moved on to do law because I didn't really want to do engineering. My dad's an engineer and I love engineering, but I just didn't want to do it. And he said, well, what about law? Because I like problem solving and arguing. And so I did law at Southampton University, which I didn't particularly enjoy. The academic study of law, and I said there's a lot of people, it's got nothing to do with the practical practice of law in real life, but it was a gateway that you had to go through. And I didn't do very well. I only got a 2-2, and I should have done better, which was down to a couple of factors. One was I got ill in my final year, had a damaged kidney, which in hindsight, what I should have done was delayed that year and gone back and done it a year later. But I didn't want to. And the other part was that I absolutely loved playing hockey. And I spent basically all my time playing hockey rather than studying law, which probably helps me now, but certainly didn't at the time. And following that, I originally wanted to be a barrister. And so I got onto the BVC, the Bar Vocational Course, as it once was then in London. And then realised, this is back in 2008, that the recession had happened and every job on earth was disappearing and there were no entry-level jobs for anybody. And I didn't have good enough grades academically to even get interviews for pupillage. I got a couple, but nothing came of them. And so I sort of had a bit of a rethink, and I quickly realised that working as part of a team was something that was really important to me. And if you work at the bar, you do in a way, but you're out on your own most of the time. Paid holidays is another thing that I quite liked. And so the solicitor side of the profession was much more attractive. And at the time, it was easier to get into. And I was very fortunate. Eventually, following a graduate placement at an insurance company, I got a paralegal job at a very entry level at DAC Beechcroft in Bristol, where I started doing my trip slips and falls. My first claim was worth about £70. It was an old chap who'd fallen down some stairs with broken his glasses. He just wanted his glasses back. That's all he wanted. And I paid that. So perhaps, I don't know if that was our fault or not, but it seemed like it was. So I just paid it. It was the right thing to do. So the cost of defending it was way more than the cost of the claim. And he had fallen down the stairs. So the chances I had more of a claim than just the £70 of his glasses. And it started from there. And over the years, I've moved up through the ranks, through paralegal, through to solicitor, through associate, principal associate, and now to partner.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be said, it's been super fast career progression along with that, particularly within the law. Because I think one thing for sure that to kind of build on from what you said there, with my business degree to actually running a degree is very different. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit more about your practice area for those who might be less familiar and talk us through a little bit more of that in detail?
Yeah, so well, I work in personal injury. That's the first thing. I sometimes refer to it as insurance. It's personal injury and insurance in my mind are the same thing. I defend personal injury claims. So if you were unfortunate enough to get injured and it was somebody else's fault, and the person whose fault it was insured, you would sue them and vis-a-vis their insurance company. And I would be instructed, or someone like me would be instructed, to defend the claim. Now, personal injury claims are very, very diverse. So it could be as simple as, oh, I've bruised my arm, in which case it recovers and literally isn't worth anything, all the way up to what I specialize in, which is catastrophic injuries, which is where you might get a brain injury or an amputation injury or a spinal injury, which results in you becoming paralyzed, and it completely changes your life, or in some situations ends your life. And so there's a very wide range of potential outcomes on injuries. And because of that, there's an extraordinarily wide range in values. And as I said, my very first claim was worth £70. The highest value claim I've been involved with was worth 36 million. And most cases that I deal with are worth £1 million plus. The vast majority are. I deal with a few sub £1 million claims, more because they're interesting than because they're necessarily my specialty. But I think I add the most value, certainly on the highest value cases, through what you mentioned in the intro, managing experts and things over multi-years and seeing bigger picture. So that's the sort of, it is in a nutshell, it's the type of injuries that you get. So it's very serious. And ultimately, it's for big insurance companies. So you can see it in two ways. One is I'm the person who stops you getting any money, or you can phrase it as I'm the person who makes sure you get the right amount of money. Both are valid in certain cases.
Yeah, I'm sure you've rehearsed that line many times before. I'm sure, Phil. In terms of we always look at trying to have inspirational guests, people who've gone above and beyond within the industry, have really fast career progression. We want to talk to those types of people because you may partner at 37. And of course, I always say to other people who might be listening to this in the same breath, run your own race at your own pace. But as I also say, resilience, tenacity, all of the things that you talked about in terms of climbing the ladder are super important. So, how did the young age?
I think it's a mixture of luck and hard work. And that isn't that exceptional. If I say it just like that, it's quite simple. I think I'm lucky for a number of factors. It's probably things that people don't really realize, but I fell into an area that I happen to be really good at legally. I never wanted to be a personal injury lawyer, or I never wanted to work in insurance. I happened to start working in that because that was basically the only proper legal job I could get. And it kind of suited my skill set. And I'm lucky that I have the skill set that I do have. And actually, I think, and no doubt we're going to talk about this later on, I think I'm lucky that I'm dyslexic because it suits the type of cases I work on really, really well, and in the way I deal with them. So there's an element of luck. The other element is hard work. And I don't know anyone who doesn't go to work and work hard, quite frankly. But I was able to spend most of my time, and I really got the value of it early on, mastering basics. And then once you can master the basics, you can replicate doing well consistently. And I think consistency is by far the most powerful means of succeeding in the long run. And ultimately, if you're doing something great, what you're really doing is something good lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times.
I love that. Absolutely love that. I talk a lot about that in terms of consistency and getting those 1% gains. And every time you're doing something over and over again, you kind of get a real high. But people think this happens overnight, and it's not weird. So please do reflect on that, folks. And when it comes back to this sort of run your own race at your own pace, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you're going to be consistent. So definitely take a leaf out of your book. But back to you.
Yeah, I think it's probably what we don't talk about enough, consistency. And no one wants to talk about consistency. And I recently read Stephen Bartlett's first book, Happy Sexy Millionaire. And if you want a book plug, that's a book I would recommend to anybody. It's not very long, and it's more like an intervention. I think that's how he describes it. But it spoke to me because it allowed me to realize some of the things. Oh, that's why I did that, or that's why I was bad at that. And actually, I'd recommend anyone, particularly in a young person, because it's a bit of a minefield. I grew up with Facebook from university age. I didn't grow up with TikTok from age 7, and so I am much better placed and equipped to deal with real world because my world is not dominated by young social media, and it's a big issue at the moment. Anyway, that's about that book. But one of the things he talks about in that book, and it's one of the things I've always thought, is skills stacking. And if you want to do well in any job or reach the top in any job, you've got to work hard and you've got to have a bit of luck. But how you apply yourself, and particularly how I applied myself for getting to where I am now, it depends on what skills you have and what skills you're prepared to develop. Now, you've got to be great at something. And in my situation, you've got to go deep into a topic, and it happens to be technical legal knowledge. That's my product that I sell. I sell legal solutions. Ultimately, that's what all lawyers sell. And so I've got very high levels of technical legal knowledge in the personal injury and the sort of civil litigation sphere. But so do loads of people. You can learn that from a book. And I'm willing to bet over 1 year, any lawyer could probably learn a completely different area of law up to 90% of the standard that anyone else could do it. And then you spend obviously years and years and years getting more experience. But ultimately, I do very little technical law on a day-to-day basis. It's a tiny part of my job. It's what you spend all your time learning at university and all your training, but I don't do much of it. I probably do 5 to 10% of it. And so all of my other time is spent doing other things than just the application of technical law. And those things are things like problem solving, analytics, being persuasive, working under pressure. And these are all skills that I've developed and worked on, and some things I'm just innately good at for other reasons, and others that I'm not very good at, but I work really hard at to try and improve. And if you can stack these skills on top of each other, the more you can stack, and if they're relevant to what you're doing, the bigger the chances that you will succeed at what you're doing. So for me personally, I have the technical ability and knowledge to do my job, but so do 20, 30 other people in my position in exactly what I do. I'm no different to any of them. In fact, I'm probably worse on a day-to-day basis. If we did a head-to-head knowledge test of me reciting case law, I reckon that I would come in the lower third, definitely, of my cohort, I would say, with regards to of reciting what the name of a case is. But I know the principle of the cases, and I know how law works. And I would come in the top third or top 10% with regard to application, because I am inherently built to solve problems. I have an innate need to solve problems. And because of being dyslexic, I see big pictures really easily. I might find written words hard to read, and I find writing quite difficult, but I find solving problems really easy, like alarmingly so. So much so that I think I can guess the answer to most problems, and they're usually right. And that's obviously not what's happening. What's happening is my subconscious is working out the answers and weighing up the information. But it allows me to offset my deficit from reading and writing very easily. So instead of, and I'll make these numbers up, but let's say an average person in my position would spend 50% of their time reading the information and then 50% of the time making the decision. I would spend 97% of the time reading the information and 3% of the time making the decision. And in fact, what will happen is I'll have made the decision before I've finished reading the information, well before, because I can see the patterns and I'm good at pattern spotting. So if you can stack some of these skills on top of each other, so technical legal knowledge is my sort of entry skill. Problem solving, I'm really good at solving problems and I love doing it. I'm really analytical, but I can take a step back and see big pictures, which again, not everybody can do. I'm persuasive in written and oral advocacy. I'm calm. I can work under pressure. The more pressure, the better. The harder the problem, the better. And so these are all individual skills that you can improve on, and they then enhance the offering. And so if you want to get to the top, and what you'll find is that most partners who reach the top, who are well known, find the law really easy because they spend their time doing other things. And that's not just being salesy, that's part of most partners' roles. But what I mean is by having other skills that they've developed, such as being really resilient or solving complex problems or taking a step back. And these, when you meet lawyers who have these skills, they set them apart from other lawyers. And you can tell instantly. And it's got nothing to do with what you learn from the book, because you don't learn any of those skills from a book. You learn those by doing things or by your personal experiences. And so if you want to get to the top of whatever you're doing, whether it be law or anything else, you need to have an entry skill that is a gateway that allows you to enter that arena, whatever that is. And then you need to stack the other skills on top of each other, 6 or 7 of other skills, and try and be in the top % of each of those. Because if you're in the top 10% of 7 or 8 relevant skills in your industry, you're probably in the top 1% or 0.5% of people in your industry at what you do. And that is what I now am reaping the rewards of, because I've spent a long time learning the basics, but I also then was able to develop all these other skills and I'm good at them. And now I get to spend my time doing things with those other skills rather than just doing technical legal work.
So we talk about mastering your craft because, every master we've all heard that, talking about those sort of base layers of entry, because a lot of people don't get on board with that. And that sort of skill stacking that you reference is great. I always say, if I put my legal recruitment hat on when considering a move, hopefully it's like another building block of your career. So you act as a point of the next job that you take is another building block, and you're enhancing your so thanks for that. You've talked a lot about the things that you get up to, and you've given that case of that £70 case to that elderly gentleman with his glasses, up to that £36 million case, hovering around that sort of £1 million mark generally. So is there one particular memorable case that you...
So one of the problems I have, whether all podcasts or any public speaking, is talking about cases is quite tricky because most of them are confidential, but the reality is that some of them you can just Google. If I told you enough about them, you can just Google it. And I've been involved with film set accidents, high profile ones. I've been involved with really difficult children cases. I've been involved with multi-car pileups which close major roads. I've been involved with building site accidents, which made the 10 o'clock news. And I have lots of cases that stand out, but the ones that stand out in my mind are the ones where I actually get to make a difference and do the right thing. And that's slightly perverse coming out of a defendant solicitor's mouth in my area, because doing the right thing isn't generally what our job is. It is in the sense that you're trying to get to a fair value, but sometimes you have a judgment call with regards to whether you do something or pay for something or not, and doing the right thing. And I have quite a strong sense of right and wrong, and whether your client's prepared to do it or not is personal to them. And so the cases where we were able to make a difference, and I always get, that's why I like using the £70 glasses one. I still don't know we were at fault in that case, but it didn't matter. He was really old. He's an older gentleman. He just wanted his glasses. And that was one of my very first cases. More recently, I've been involved with an extraordinarily high value tetraplegic case, and it took 5 or 6 years. I can't remember exactly how long it took to settle. But what we got to at the end, and this was a very young girl who was brain damaged and tetraplegic, and So tetraplegia is when none of your limbs work, and she was ventilated as well. She was incredibly sad, and everything about it was just horrific. And I met her a lot of times. I met her in hospital, and I met her legal team and her treating team a lot of times. And we got to the right outcome in the best way we could do. And they're the cases that actually resonate with me. Sometimes you come up against cases where people are just outright lying, and they're great. I love those cases because there's nothing better than catching someone outright lying. But generally speaking, because of the nature of the cases I deal with, most people can't fake having a brain injury at that level, or a spinal injury where their limbs don't work, or an amputation. Not many people get their legs cut off or their arms cut off for no reason. So those are the cases. Sorry, it's a little bit woolly. It's just trying to work out how to say it without letting somebody else down, given that I have some obligations about confidentiality. And actually, most of the cases I work on, you could work out which ones they are if I give you too much detail.
I think that it's good that you've shown who you are, your values as a lawyer. And you know what? I want to talk about something that's also very passionate to me and people who follow my journey. My mission is to build a more collaborative, thriving legal community. Are you tired of the current legal practice management software hitting you with outrageous price increases? Well, it's time to put an end to the renewal pain and discover Clio, the trusted legal practice management solution for thousands of UK solicitors. Did you know that some providers have recently increased their prices by a staggering 300%? Don't let this drain your budget any longer. With Clio, you'll experience cost-effective flexibility, transparent pricing, and a smooth migration process. Choose a plan that fits your needs and budget with no long-term commitments. Monthly billing cycles ensure you only pay for what you use. And guess what? Plans start from just £49 per user per month. No hidden fees or surprises. Worried about the migration process? Don't be. Clio will handle the migration of your existing data and set you up in a way that works for your firm. Their award-winning dedicated support team will make the transition smooth with zero downtime. Say goodbye to price hikes and hello to trusted software. Visit clio.com/UK/pricing to explore more plans and take control of your budget. And I know I've been keen to share a lot of my knowledge by the time I retire. And I know it's something you're passionate about as well. But I'm sad to say I don't see it enough from partners and people within the legal profession in terms of sharing that knowledge. So why does it matter to you?
Well, the first thing, if we go back to, we talk about the skill stacking. And if everybody has the knowledge in my industry at my level, then there's no competitive advantage to have it. And so traditionally, my experience of lawyers is that your value comes out of what's in your head and your knowledge. But my experience of that is just not true. It's certainly not what I do, because it is a technical area, but it's technical in small doses. Well, most of it is factually complex and scenario complex. And that's not knowledge, that's skill. And to assess that. And so sharing the knowledge that I have with regards to those skills is applicable to many, many different areas. And I strongly believe that the more people who are better at their jobs, or are able to do their jobs, or more capable of doing jobs, the better the world will be. And I suspect there will be, out of 100 people, 50 who don't care, probably 30 who do care, but would rather I wasn't doing it for their own reasons, and then maybe 20 who really appreciate it. And I have chosen to focus on the 20 who'd really appreciate it, not least as it's a two-way street. I don't know everything, and the more knowledge I share, the more I get back. So it's not entirely altruistic, but I think you can't be a true leader in today's world where you can Google just about anything if you're not prepared to share what you already have. And I think that makes it much easier for people to follow you. And I am in a leadership position now, and I'm aware of that. And I've also got a relatively high profile position compared to certain items that have happened to me, either be talking about neurodiversity or making partner relatively young. I've been in the League of 100 a long time. These things help make sure that I sort of have a higher profile than necessarily my peers. And I think with that comes responsibility. I'm acutely aware that I want to give back. And it sounds a bit more like I'm running a charity, which I'm absolutely not. And I'm not going to prepare or pretend that lawyers are charities, and we're incredibly lucky and have an incredibly sought after role, and ultimately still a career progression that people want. But I want to be part of trying to make that better. And I agree completely with what your mentor said. I saw you post about it recently. I commented on it. It's something I'd thought about in my own time, but actually I must have subconsciously seen it somewhere else. And I would want to give back. People gave me loads of time and effort, and I want to do that for other people. I mean, it's that in a nutshell. I think the world will be better if we all share a bit more.
And that's why I hope when people listen to the journey and think, you know what, actually, I can help people, I can share, I do have a value, because I strongly believe that everybody has a value. Even when people come to me and say, Rob, I don't have much to share, I think that's a limited belief. Everyone has a value. So, because you could be helping someone else just get started out in their career, or help them at a point where they might be in their career. Okay, so let's talk about neurodiversity. I'm going to talk about a follow-up question about your recent feature you had regarding dyslexia, but chose to be a real huge advocate for neurodiversity. So, we've done a lot of episodes in and around this, but it's something that we're absolutely supportive of in the show. So would you mind telling us a little bit more your why and how you advocate for it in your own words within your own professional networks?
So I'm going to preface this with, my wife's also dyslexic, and almost anything smart or sensible I say about business has probably come out of her mouth first. And she has been banging on to me since I met her 8 years ago, how diverse thinking is important. And she is a woman who works in advertising and has been very, very successful at a global level. And she's been in the rooms where all the men don't want to listen to the little girl, except she's been the only one who understood what was really happening, because she thinks differently and she couldn't understand why other people didn't, and she can see the benefit of it. And it took me a while to really get my head around this, embarrassingly so. I should have called it originally, and I didn't even think that I was neurodiverse, because I only found out I was dyslexic back in 2014. So after I'd done all my training, all my schooling. And so I'm late to the party with how my brain works, but she wasn't. So she's got a lot more insight. And I absolutely agree with her that if you don't have diversity of thought in teams, you're just leaving options on the table. You're not even considering things that might be the right answer, or probably are the right answer. You're also going to take longer to get to the right answer. But actually, I think you probably won't get to the right answer. So whether that be diversity in race or gender, or whether that be neurodiversity, which is what I'm a champion of, given I'm a white middle-class boy, I'm absolutely the wrong stat in every way about diversity, with the exception of the fact that I'm dyslexic and I'm a partner at a law firm. And so that's my area of disability, although I refer to it as my superpower. But having diverse thoughts allows you to really understand a problem and then think creatively of the solution, because the solution might be the opposite to what you all think, or what traditionally we think. The internet is changed the world, but it was very different when it first came up. And so if you aren't going to be surrounded by people who have different views of the world, different experiences from their upbringing, different life journeys, different priorities, different levels of empathy, then you are less likely to be successful. And I'm pretty sure the data exists. You'll have to forgive me, I cannot remember the name of the study. It's a very famous study which talks about the profit in companies which are neurodiverse versus not neurodiverse, and how astronomically different it is, and in favor of neurodiverse teams and diverse teams in general. And so I think those are the core elements. And whether you're neurodiverse or just outright diverse in respect of gender or race, and age being another, then the more we can encourage it, I think overall, the better we're going to be and the more inclusive we are. And in my mind, that's better for the world.
A really good point as well. We're not looking for echo chambers. And again, a mentor once said to me, you don't know what you don't know. And ultimately, if you don't open your horizons to diversity of thought or other opinions in business, at the end of the day, it's giving yourself a chance to get access to broader thoughts, better information, and it's actually for good. So Mubson has that sense of belonging. I love that you recently shared a LinkedIn post that you had changed your email signature. Really, really like that. And obviously it did fantastically well. And you do produce lots of really good content on LinkedIn, generally lots of thought-provoking posts out there. So for those of you roadblocks or they've gone backwards, what would be your words of wisdom you have for those?
I have had loads of failure in my career. And I think anyone who pretends like they haven't in any job is lying. They just are. Failure is what molds us. And it's really, really important. But it's brutal. And it can be really upsetting. And I didn't get my training contract. I never got a training contract, in fact. I qualified by becoming a legal exec and then cross-qualifying into being a solicitor. But I didn't get my training contracts. I'm going to say should, but not in an entitled way. I didn't do well enough. I should have done better. And it was there to be taken both times. And that was a real problem for me. And it was a real setback. It made me cry. I don't mind saying that. And it spurred me on in two ways. One is it confirmed to me I did want to succeed and become a solicitor. And that became the most important professional thing, qualifying. I didn't have to qualify to do a legal job. You don't need to be qualified. To me, it became really important. Not at all costs, but it became really important. And it also gave me a chip on my shoulder. And so I fell behind my immediate peer group, who, by the way, now all work at Apple, Google. They're senior directors at big litigation firms. But I was well behind them. They were all progressing and I was well behind. But I'm the first partner out of all of them. And so just because you fall behind or you think you've fallen behind early on, you shouldn't worry about it. You should let it affect you, because it will, and accept that it's going to affect you. And just reevaluate what your priorities are and then take some ownership with regards to what you can do about it. You're the only person who can control how you feel, how you react, and then what you do in a situation. No one else can. And I think, certainly in today's world, that people don't take enough personal responsibility. It's very easy to blame a wide range of factors. But the people I see who are very successful and the people I look up to all have extremely high levels of personal responsibility. And if you take personal responsibility, you can do something about it. The flip side of that is that others see you doing something about it, which either inspires other people or gives them confidence in you. And so when I knuckled down and did it the hard way, people responded to that because I was prepared to do the basics well, as I mentioned earlier. And I became the go-to person for expert recommendations not in my firm, but in my office. And that's because I kept an expert database. I just kept a list of them all because I realized that was super important to all the cases that I had and all the cases that other people worked with. And I developed really good relationships with the expert secretaries. And so if you wanted an expert for a particular medical issue, and the best experts have very long waiting lists, I could get you a quicker appointment because the secretary liked me. And so I turned the fact that I had to spend longer at the bottom And I've been pretty vocal about this in the past. About my first legal job was worth 16 grand a year. I didn't earn 30 grand a year until I was 30, and I'm 37 now and I'm a partner. So the exponential growth in my salary, and I have a 6-figure salary now. So it's astronomical in the second half of my career. But the first part, we go back to the basics and consistencies and the knockbacks and the failings. It all fuels do your basics well. So my advice is to not give up. What you should do is reflect. And if you are lucky enough to have somebody who is in the profession, who you trust and who likes you, they are almost certainly going to be able to give you honest feedback about areas for improvement. And that might be difficult for you to stomach, but take it on board and then try and focus on what's holding you back, because somebody else will know. And it's probably one of the skills like working together or public speaking or how you present yourself or internal networking. It's probably something like that rather than your innate mental ability to do the job.
So again, I mentioned it earlier in the show, you don't know what you don't know, but this is failing forward. It's because if you're doing something right, and I read a quote the other week, which I'm probably going to misquote here, but it's something along the lines of, experience you can make good decisions. So you've got to allow yourself to fail forward. So I always also say what a great mentor said to me in terms of self-accountability: if it's meant to be, it's up to me. So, things are going to go wrong, but being able to take that self-accountability is so, so important. So I want to quickly talk, it's very exciting, that you've recently launched your own podcast, London Insurance Lawyer. So what motivated you to start a podcast, and what topics do you cover there?
So the motivation is part of a wider strategy. So I've got a problem being a young partner, and people are going to say, cry me a river here. But in 25 years, I'm still going to be a partner, except that I won't know the people who are entering the profession now. So given the nature of the work I do, which is high end, I deal with claims directors all day, every day, and very senior people in insurers. So I have no problem meeting them because they come with the cases, and I'm going to keep meeting them for the next 20 years. But I'm not going to be spending time with the junior people who are entering the profession now. And I do relatively now because I'm still young, but in 15 years' time, if you're 22, you're less likely to want to hang out with me when I'm 50. And I might not speak the same way as you. I might not be as clued into what you like. Hopefully I will be. But that might not be the case. So I realized I had this problem. And one of the strands to try and help with it was to create some content that would have some longevity and would allow me to meet lots of different people in lots of different environments, and for me to get to know them and for me to share their journeys. So the podcast came out of that. And the idea of it is to make it very personal, much like this one, actually, if I'm honest, with regards to, it's about the individual, about what they share, but it's specific to my industry with regards to insurance as much as possible. There are some wider guests who I've recorded episodes with, but I'm sitting on at the moment. But what I'd like to do is encourage people to enter the insurance industry. I'm a London insurance lawyer. It's literally called London Insurance Lawyer Podcast for a reason. Insurance has a big problem with recruitment. Law has a big problem with recruitment because there's lots of people, but not enough good jobs. But insurance is the exact opposite. There's loads of amazing jobs, not enough people, because it's not cool. One of my other mantras is, I want to make personal injury cool again. Sometimes people haven't had the best view of personal injury. It's really cool. And I'm going to say that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until people realize it. It's so diverse with what you do. Every day is different. I don't do A plus B equals C. I rarely do that. I do A plus B minus Z equals bananas. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And if you're that way minded, it's great. And so the podcast is to try and get some of those things across. So there's obviously a bit of personal brand in there, but it's really about me meeting people, either current or prospective clients, but being more of a market leader in the insurance world and with law, particularly law and insurance, with regards to understanding more about the industry and also encouraging people to succeed in it and being a resource.
I'd have to say I do love what you've produced thus far. It sounds. Go and check that out, folks. I want to briefly talk about what we talked about off air, which is the life of being a parent. As you know, you're a partner, which ultimately has I'm a business owner, whatever it might be. You're very vocal about working life as a dad and a partner on tick to have, in terms of helping others navigate those challenges and the struggles of everyday life.
50% of parents are dads, broadly speaking. I mean, I suspect it's slightly less than that in reality due to social circumstances, but broadly speaking. Yet I don't hear 50% of supportive comments for parents being aimed at dads. And one of the challenges that I found over the last, so I've got two children. I've got a 2.5-year-old boy and I've got a 5.5-month little girl. And when my 2.5-year-old was born, my wife and I were actually building our house. We self-built a house, and it was COVID as well, so it was quite intense. And a lot was going on, and we didn't get much sleep at all. And I reckon I averaged for about 5 or 6 months during one of the hardest periods of work, professional work. I got promoted whilst building a house, whilst dealing with a pandemic, and whilst having a baby and learning how to be a dad. I reckon I averaged 4 hours sleep, and that was broken sleep. And that took me not just to the edge, it took me well over the edge. And objectively, you'd have known I was tired, but you wouldn't have known it was really like just how hard it was when he met me. Other than the fact that I got a cough and I never got rid of it until eventually my manager at the time said, you need to not come to work for a week. You need to get yourself signed off for a week so that you can go and get better. Now, what she knew I was going to do was go and build my house for a week because it was really stressful. But that's what she said. You're stressing me out because I think something might go wrong at work. And so being a dad was what the complicating factor was. All of those things would have been manageable had I had some sleep, had some more sleep. And so talking about these issues, and that's quite an extreme example. Obviously, I was building a house. It was a pandemic. I knew dad and I was getting promoted at work. And being a lawyer isn't an easy job, but most jobs aren't easy. But my job is inherently to take on other people's problems that they can't solve and then solve them, some of which are unsolvable, but still get expected to try and solve them. And so dealing with stress and being a parent is a traditional part of going to work, but nobody really talks about that. And every time I talk to a young dad, you're a young dad as well, you've got a 2.5-year-old little girl, it impacts you in all of your life, except I don't really find many people talk about it. And I really find even fewer people talk about it in what I would call high-end professional services, such as law. Very few people talk about it. Yeah. If we go back to the original stat, 50% of parents, or broadly speaking, will be going through or will have gone through something very similar. And it's really tricky to go to work and then come home and be a really engaged parent because you're exhausted from work. And I think the more we talk about that being a really positive thing and how we should embrace it, the better. I've got strong views about parental leave and maternity leave. I think it should be gender neutral. I think particularly for your first child, dads should get the same amount of time off that women do to learn how to be parents. It takes 2 parents to raise a child. Other people may have a different view to that, but I believe that. I believe that's what's happening in the modern world, and I think that's where we're heading. And I think that's what we should support. That also might help remove some of the stigma for mums returning to work after time off, if dads have also done it, and the issues that causes in their careers. And so being vocal about these issues, and now I'm in a position of, I put quote unquote power. I've got a voice, and I think I should use it to promote these things. In fact, my best ever LinkedIn performing post was just a picture of the crib next to my bed, the Moses basket next to my desk, and I only looked after it for about an hour that day, and I was getting messages from all over the world, and I still do from that post. It still performs well, 6 months later, 5 months later. And just talking about those things, I think, is really good.
Yeah, and it is important. And, it comes down to, again, I keep talking about we're all humans. Yeah, we're in a world of AI and robots, and they're coming. Sure, they are coming and they're here. But we are humans. We're emotional. We have feelings. We can't, just continue the way that years and years and years have gone by where you should hide things. I actually endorse, I talk about not longer B2B, B2C, but H2H, human to human connection, and actually being authentic, and, this open leadership that you're showing. And for me, the other piece that I would link back to people, which is I couldn't make it happen in the industries I was before. So I had my own reasons, one, set up my own business, but I wanted to be a present dad. I wanted to be able to do bath time. So it was up to me, right, to make a lifestyle that enabled me to do that. So, again, always think about like, what do you want and how can you make those circumstances work for you? And Phill, I've really enjoyed learning all your insights and, learning about your career journey. And if people want to learn more about your sort of career journey or get access to the content you're sharing, what are the best ways for them to find out more? Feel free to chat out your website links, social media handles. We'll also make sure we share them with this journey for you too.
So the easiest way of getting a hold of me, you can either email me at work. That's no problem. You just go to the Keoghs website. My email's there. You can just Google me. It all comes up. The London Insurance Lawyer podcast, which is also on my own website, which is londoninsurancelawyers.com. That's a sort of fledgling website. It's currently just the host for the podcast, but I think we're going to build that out. Or LinkedIn, which is at Phill Bratt. Or finally, you can pick me up on TikTok at London Insurance Lawyer. I'm still working on TikTok. It's still a sort of fledgling enterprise. I'll probably measure that over 5 years. So come and see me on there. I try and do as much content as possible, but being a dad, time is limited. So any of those channels would be great for me.
Good stuff. Well, make sure you go and check those out. And I must give you the chance to give one final piece of advice for people who would like to enter the cool area of personal injury. I can get my words out. So for those wanting a career in it, what would you say are your best words of advice?
Go and get an entry-level job. There's loads of them out there. It won't be well paying, I'll tell you that now. But what it will do is the gateway, and it's self-selecting. But you will have real responsibility about real cases from the beginning of your legal career. You'll do your own work. You'll manage your own time. And for most lawyers, that's what you really want to do. But in personal injury, you can do it from the very beginning, and you don't need a qualification. We can teach you what you need to know.
There you have it, folks. Go and get busy. Thank you so much, Phill. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Legally Speaking podcast. From all of us on the show, wishing you lots of continued success. All of us, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.